The unexpected visitor. It was just another evening. The sky, painted with hues of orange and pink, slowly turned into twilight. The day had been quiet, and things had felt normal. The hum of traffic outside, the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. For him, life was simple, peaceful even. Little did he know his world was about to be turned upside down. As the clock ticked past 7, a knock echoed through the quiet house. Not just any knock. It was sharp, almost urgent. It didn't feel like a neighbor asking to borrow something. It was different, heavy, like something important was about to happen. He stood frozen for a moment, staring at the door. Who would be visiting at this hour? He hesitated for a second, then walked over to the door, his step slow and cautious. With a deep breath, he opened it. What stood in front of him was beyond anything he could have imagined. A woman, but not entirely. She was tall, dressed in dark flowing robes that seemed to shimmer in the dim light, as if woven from something that wasn't quite fabric. Her eyes were unlike anything he had ever seen, an eerie glowing blue, like the light of a distant star. Her skin was pale, almost transparent, with hints of a faint glowing pattern running across it. She was beautiful, but there was an underlying sadness in her expression. And fear. He stood there, unable to speak, his mind racing to understand what he was looking at. Was she a person? An alien? A dream? His hand instinctively moved to the door frame for support. "I need your help, and so do my children," she said in a soft, almost pleading voice. The words, though simple, struck him like a thunderclap. He blinked, trying to process what she had just said. Children? Why was she here? Who was she? Her voice trembled slightly as she continued, "Please, I know this is hard to understand, but my people, we're dying. I can't raise my children alone. I need you." His heart raced. Dying. Children. This was too much. The world he knew suddenly felt fragile, like it could crumble with a single wrong move. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He felt a mixture of fear, confusion, and something else. Curiosity. She stared at him, those glowing blue eyes searching his face, waiting for a response. There was no malice in her gaze, only desperation. He should have slammed the door. He should have run. But something inside him made him hesitate. Was it the way she looked at him? Or the sense that this moment, this strange encounter, was more significant than anything he had ever known? "What do you want from me?" he finally managed to ask, his voice shaking, unsure if he even wanted to hear the answer. Her expression softened. "I have no choice. My children need a father." She paused, her eyes searching his face once more. "Please. The future of my race depends on this." The words hung in the air, heavy and thick with meaning. The widow's plea wasn't just for help, it was a call for survival, for her and for her children. But who were these children? And why had she come to him? His mind whirled. Was this a trap? Or was it real? One thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The revelation. He stared at her for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of the words that had just spilled from her lips. Her plea hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. "My children need a father," she had said. But what did that really mean? And why him? There was no way to ignore the unease gnawing at him. His mind raced through the possibilities. Was she insane? Or was this some kind of strange, twisted joke? But something about her, her eyes, those glowing ancient eyes, told him this was no ordinary visit. She stood there waiting, her face drawn in a mixture of exhaustion and desperation. Without speaking, she gestured for him to step aside. There was a long pause, the kind of pause that felt like a warning. He was already feeling the pull of something strange, something almost magnetic, and despite every rational instinct screaming at him to close the door and walk away, he found himself stepping back, His curiosity had already won. The alien widow stepped into his home, her presence immediately filling the space like a weight. He watched her move, her robes shifting in ways that made it hard to focus, almost as if they were alive, adapting to every inch of the room she entered. "I know this is overwhelming," she said, her voice soft, but with a quiet authority. "But you must understand. My people are not like your people. We have been among you for centuries, hidden, waiting." He blinked. "Among us? What do you mean?" His voice came out almost as a whisper, still unsure whether to believe what he was hearing. She paused for a moment, as if contemplating how much to reveal. "We were once part of the Earth's greater family," she explained, her gaze lowering, a flicker of something painful crossing her face. "But when the great cataclysm came, we had no choice but to retreat, to protect what remained of us. My kind, we live in harmony with Earth, using the energy of your planet to survive. But that harmony was shattered." She paused again, the sadness in her eyes growing deeper. "We are dying. Our children, born of both human and alien blood, are the last hope of our kind. They need a father, a human father. You are the one we've chosen." He felt a chill crawl up his spine. Chosen? Was this some kind of intergalactic game? Or was it a genuine plea for survival? He wanted to ask more, wanted to demand answers. But something in her voice told him that the truth was far more complicated than he could ever imagine. "Why me?" he finally asked, almost unable to keep the question from escaping his lips. "Why come to me?" Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something else, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. It wasn't fear. It was hope. "Because you are the only one who can help us," she said, her voice quiet yet certain. "You are the key. The children. They are not fully human, not fully alien. They need someone like you. You must raise them, teach them what it means to be human, or else they will perish." Her words were like a punch to the gut. His mind raced, but the room seemed to get smaller. She wasn't just asking for help. She was asking for something far greater. The widow looked down, then back up at him, her gaze intense. "And there's more," she continued, her voice barely a whisper now. "You must understand the consequences. You cannot turn back once. You accept? Everything will change." Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, and just as he opened his mouth to ask another question, the soft sound of footsteps echoed from behind her. His eyes widened as 3 small figures appeared from the shadows of the hallway. The children. They stood in a line, eyes wide and curious, but there was something unmistakably otherworldly about them. The first was a girl, no older than 6, with eyes glowing faintly like her mother's. The second was a boy, around the same age, but his eyes were pitch black, void-like, as if they had swallowed all the light in the room. The third child, a toddler, had a soft silver-like aura around him, his eyes calm but unnervingly focused. "They are your responsibility now," the widow whispered. "You must protect them, teach them, love them." The weight of her words hit him all at once. This was no ordinary request. He wasn't just being asked to help an alien race. He was being asked to change the course of his own life, and the lives of these children. He had no idea what to say. But one thing was certain. He had crossed a threshold. There was no turning back now. A strange proposal, the night stretched on, and the alien widow's presence loomed in his house like a constant reminder that his life had just been irrevocably altered. The children, strange and beautiful in their otherworldly ways, had taken their place near the widow, watching him with eyes that seemed to hold more knowledge than he could ever understand. His mind swirled with questions, but none of them seemed to make sense. How could this be real? Was this some kind of nightmare? Or was he caught in the middle of a cosmic drama far beyond anything he could have imagined? The widow's voice broke through his thoughts, soft yet firm. "You must know. There is more at stake here than just raising my children. Your world, the Earth, is in danger, and it has been for centuries. He looked at her, trying to make sense of the cryptic words. Danger? His throat was dry, the words sounding foreign even to him. What do you mean? Her eyes never wavered. From his. You think your problems, climate change, war, the collapse of ecosystems, are just human mistakes. They are not. They are a result of a deeper, more ancient struggle. My people have been protecting Earth for millennia, but now, we can no longer hold back what's coming. His heart raced. What's coming? She took a deep breath as though the weight of the truth had just settled on her shoulders. There is a force in the galaxy, far more ancient and powerful than you can imagine. It feeds on the destruction of worlds, of entire species. It's been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for the moment to strike. We are the last line of defense, but we cannot do it alone. We need your help. The gravity of her words hit him hard. The Earth, his home, wasn't just facing environmental collapse. It was being targeted by something else. Something more dangerous, more terrifying than anything he had ever been taught to fear. His mind reeled at the implications. Was she lying? Was this some elaborate ruse to manipulate him? Or was this truly the reality that he now had to accept? The widow didn't wait for him to answer. She stepped closer, her movements graceful and fluid, as if she were walking through the air itself. A dangerous choice. The house was quiet, too quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The widow stood in the corner, watching him, waiting. The children, those strange, glowing beings, played quietly on the floor, their innocence betraying the immense power that lay hidden beneath their small exteriors. The air felt thick with unspoken questions, and as he stared at them, he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping up his spine. He had made a decision, or rather, the decision had been made for him. He couldn't simply turn away now, not after everything he had learned. But what had he really agreed to? Raising these alien children? Protecting a race on the brink of extinction? And why him? The widow's plea echoed in his mind. You are the key. He had tried to push the thought away, tried to convince himself it was just a desperate lie, but something about the way she said those words made it impossible to ignore. He was no hero, no savior. He was just a regular guy, one who'd never even considered that his life might be anything but ordinary. But now everything had changed. He turned to face her, the weight of his decision settling heavily on his chest. What exactly am I agreeing to? He asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. You said I'd be helping raise them, but there's got to be more to this than just that, right? The widow's eyes flickered with a mixture of sadness and understanding. She stepped closer, her robes barely brushing the floor, as if they had a mind of their own. Raising them is just the beginning, she said softly. They need more than a father. They need a leader, a guide who can help them harness their abilities, who can help them control their power. He stared at her, his heart pounding. Control their power? He repeated, almost disbelieving. What do you mean? These kids they're just kids. I can't teach them to fight or whatever it is you're asking me to do. Her gaze sharpened. You don't understand. These children are not normal. They are the last hope of my people. Their powers are beyond anything you've ever seen. They can heal, they can manipulate energy, they can change the very fabric of reality if they choose. But right now, they are unpredictable, unstable. His blood ran cold. Unstable. How was he supposed to deal with that? How was he supposed to protect them, or even keep them alive, if they were capable of destroying everything with a single thought? How am I supposed to help them control something like that? He asked, panic rising in his chest. The widow's expression softened. You will teach them humanity, she said simply. You will show them the value of life, of empathy. These powers, they are dangerous. If left unchecked, they could destroy everything. The children need to understand their own limitations, their own responsibilities. Her words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. He wasn't just signing up to be a father, he was being thrust into a role far greater than he had ever imagined. He was going to be their teacher, their protector, their mentor. A wave of doubt washed over him. What had he gotten himself into? But before he could voice his fears, the youngest child, the silver-haired toddler, tugged at his sleeve. The child's touch was soft, almost delicate, but there was something in his gaze that was piercing, as if he were older than he appeared, as if he had seen the weight of galaxies upon his tiny shoulders. "Will you protect us?" the child asked in a voice so quiet it barely reached his ears. The words hit him like a slap. Protect them? How could he? He didn't even know how to protect himself, let alone these children with powers beyond his understanding. I don't know," he murmured, his voice shaky. The widow stepped forward, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "You must know. You have no choice now. These children will be your responsibility, just as your world will be. You must protect them, guide them, and in turn they will help you save Earth from the coming darkness." The weight of her words settled on his shoulders like a mountain. There was no turning back now. He had stepped into a world he didn't fully understand, and he had to embrace it no matter how terrifying it seemed. "You said the invaders are coming," he said, trying to steady his nerves. "But how do we stop them? How can I stop something that powerful?" The widow's eyes darkened. "You will not stop them alone. The children have powers, yes, but you, human, you hold the key to their potential. Together, you will form a bond unlike anything the universe has ever seen. A bond." The word felt heavy, final. He looked at the children again. Their eyes, though young, were ancient, filled with a depth of understanding that made his head spin. They weren't just kids. No. They were the future. The future of not just an alien race, but of Earth itself. "Are you ready?" the widow asked, her voice soft yet laden with expectation. He exhaled sharply, feeling the full weight of the decision crash down on him. The path ahead was uncertain, terrifying even, but there was no turning back. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I'm ready." The words didn't feel like his own, but somehow they left his lips anyway. And as the widow nodded, the children stepped closer to him, their eyes filled with trust and fear. He wasn't just their father now. He was their protector. And together, they would face whatever was coming. But the questions still lingered, unanswered. Would they be enough to stop the coming storm? First contact. The world outside his window was still quiet, almost unnervingly so. Yet within his home, everything had changed. The alien widow had made her plea, and he had agreed, without fully understanding what that meant. Now, standing in the living room, he felt more like a pawn than a protector. The children, the silver-haired toddlers with glowing eyes, moved around the house as if they belonged there. But did they? He was supposed to teach them, protect them, but his mind spun with questions. What was he supposed to do first? How could he teach children who weren't entirely human? And what did controlling their powers actually mean? The widow had left him with the children for the night, promising that everything would become clearer in time. But what was this? The growing unease gnawing at him from the inside. Was it fear, curiosity, or something deeper? Something more instinctual, like the knowledge that this was a moment that would define everything to come? As if on cue, the youngest child, who had barely spoken since his arrival, approached him. The child had eyes that were entirely too wise for his age. His small, silver-tinged body seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light. He approached without a word, staring up at him, his eyes piercing and oddly familiar. The boy reached out, small hands brushing against his arm. A strange, almost electric sensation hummed under his skin, like the child was a conduit for something otherworldly. He could feel it, whatever this power was. It wasn't human. It was something ancient, like a spark waiting to ignite. Suddenly the boy's eyes flashed, and before he could react, The air around him crackled. A surge of energy pulsed through the room, vibrating the walls. The boy's small frame lifted off the ground just a few inches, like an invisible force, was gently pushing him up. The lights flickered, the windows rattled. The boy's eyes locked with his, and the air seemed to thicken. He could almost hear the boy's thoughts, or was it just a sensation? An instinct, a warning. Something's wrong. Control it. Now. The child's floating body wavered, as if the power surging through him was too much for his tiny form to handle. His glowing eyes flickered. Then, in an instant, the child fell back to the ground with a soft thud, his feet landing gently on the carpet. The energy in the room dissipated as quickly as it had come, and the walls stopped vibrating. The lights returned to their usual glow, but the tension in the air remained, and so did the eerie silence that followed. The boy stood, his small body trembling slightly, but the look in his eyes was clear. He knew what had just happened. He turned his gaze to the widow, who stood in the doorway, watching without speaking. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice shaky, a mix of awe and fear. She stepped into the room, calm and composed, like nothing had happened. "That was his power," she said, her voice soft but serious. "The children's abilities are not fully controlled yet. They don't understand the full extent of their own strength. But that's why you're here, to help them learn." His heart still pounded in his chest as he processed what had just happened. This wasn't just about raising children. He wasn't just helping them grow into normal beings. No, this was about teaching them to wield powers that could tear the world apart if misused. The boy, still trembling slightly, reached out for him, his tiny hand gripping his sleeve. The widow stepped forward, her presence grounding the moment. "He's afraid," she said softly. "Fear is natural. Their power comes from fear and the unknown. You must show them that fear can be controlled, that they are not slaves to it." He looked down at the child, who was now gazing up at him with an expression far too mature for his age. The boy's hand tightened around his sleeve as if seeking reassurance. The pressure of the moment hit him again. What the hell had he gotten himself into? He bent down slowly, meeting the boy's gaze. "It's okay," he said, unsure if his voice sounded more confident than he felt. "You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together, all right?" The boy nodded, his eyes softening, just a little. But the widow's voice interrupted his fleeting sense of connection. "The children's powers are not only a gift, they are a burden, a curse. The energy they can manipulate is connected to the very fabric of reality itself. If they are not taught discipline and control, the consequences will be catastrophic." His stomach twisted at the weight of her words. Catastrophic. Could he really handle this? He wasn't a teacher, a leader, or a superhero. He was just a guy, an ordinary person who had been pulled into an extraordinary situation. But he had no choice now. He had to try. For them. For the earth. For everything. The widow stepped back, her expression unreadable. "You must be ready. Because this is only the beginning." As her words settled in the room like a heavy fog, he felt the weight of what lay ahead. This wasn't just about protecting a group of alien children. It was about stopping something far worse. Something they had yet to face. But what that was, he had no idea. And as the boy's small, trembling hand rested in his, he realized that his life, his very world, was about to become much more than he had ever bargained for. The enemy within. The sun had barely risen, but a strange, unsettling feeling lingered in the air. He sat in the living room, his mind still trying to process everything that had happened in the past few days. The widow's warnings echoed in his head, and the children, those strange, powerful beings, had been quiet since the incident with the youngest boy. He had no idea what to expect, no clear plan of what he was supposed to do. But something had changed. He could feel it. The silence was broken by a sharp knock at the door. His pulse quickened. It was too early for a visitor. He hesitated for a moment, but something, an instinct, told him he had to answer. When he opened the door, he was met not by the widow or the children, but by a man. Tall, thin, and wearing a black suit, he stood with an air of calm, but his presence sent a shiver down his spine. There was something off about him, his pale skin, his perfectly groomed hair, the way he stood just a little too still, as if he didn't belong in this world. "May I speak with you?" the man asked, his voice smooth but unsettling. Before he could respond, the man stepped forward, almost gliding into the room as though he had been invited. He barely gave him a chance to object. "I don't mean to disturb you," the man continued, "but there are matters at play that you must understand. Your world, it's more fragile than you think." He froze, a sinking feeling in his stomach. "Who is this guy? What does he know? Who are you?" he asked, his voice thick with suspicion. The man smiled slightly, but the expression didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm here to warn you. The widow, she's not who she says she is." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. What? His mind raced. The widow had been nothing but honest, nothing but desperate. But now this strange man was suggesting something else. "Don't trust her," the man continued, stepping closer. "She's not the only one of her kind. Her race, they're not just dying, they've been playing both sides of the game for a long time. And Earth? Earth is just another piece on their chessboard." The room suddenly felt too small, the air thick with tension. He glanced nervously toward the children who were in the other room, playing quietly. Did they hear? Did they know? The man leaned in, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "They've been manipulating you, using your compassion. They need you, yes, but not in the way you think. They don't just want Earth to survive. They want to control it. The widow? She's a pawn just like you. But you're the real prize. You're the one who will decide the fate of your planet." He stepped back, confusion flooding his senses. "You're lying. She's just trying to protect her kids. She's been honest with me." The man's smile faded. "You really think she's the only one who's been watching you? The children, their powers, they're not just a gift, they are a weapon. A weapon that, if left unchecked, will become unstoppable. And what happens when she no longer needs you? When she's gotten what she wants?" The cold truth of his words sank in. His heart pounded in his chest. Could it be true? Had he been manipulated this whole time? Before he could process more, the man's expression grew dark. "You've made a dangerous choice, trusting her, and now, you will have to face the consequences. You're not just fighting for your world anymore, you're fighting for your freedom. Because if you don't act now, she will turn your world into nothing but dust." He was reeling now, dizzy with doubt. He could feel the man's presence, pressing in on him, the weight of his words like a crushing weight. Suddenly he heard it, faint but unmistakable. A crackling sound like static rising from the other room. He turned his head toward the children. The man noticed too, his face unreadable. "It's already starting." The child with the black eyes, the one who had shown the most promise, the one who had been so silent, was standing in the doorway. His small hands trembled as he stared at the man, his face shadowed with something dark and dangerous. It wasn't fear that clouded his expression. No, it was something else, something more sinister. The boy's voice was low, almost like a growl. "You shouldn't have come here." The man's smile returned, but it was cold and twisted. "Ah, so the little one finally speaks. Tell me, boy, how much do you know about your mother's plans?" The air in the room grew thick with tension. The child's eyes glowed brighter, and the static grew louder, like the air itself was alive with power. And then it hit him. This wasn't just a warning. This was a battle that had already begun. The man stepped back, his eyes narrowed, and in that moment he knew one thing for certain. There was no easy way out. The widow's enemies had infiltrated, and the fight for Earth had just taken a darker turn. What if they were right? What if the children, his children, were the real threat? He couldn't trust anyone anymore. The door slammed shut behind the man, leaving him in the deafening silence of the room. He turned to the children now standing silently, the weight of their powers making the air feel heavy. One question echoed through his mind. Had he just become part of a war he didn't even know was coming? The final decision. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the room as the weight of his choices settled deeper into his chest. Every inch of the house felt alive with tension, the silence almost unbearable. He stood by the window, staring out at the horizon where the last light of day faded into the encroaching night. His mind raced. There was no more pretending, no more running from the truth. The man who had appeared at his door earlier had planted the seed of doubt, a seed that had grown wild and uncontrollable in his mind. Could the widow be lying? What if the children's powers weren't a blessing but a curse? His thoughts spun in chaotic circles, each one tightening like a noose around his heart. If I walk away now, will Earth be destroyed? If I stay, will I be complicit in something far darker than I could ever understand? He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the soul of Earth and the future of his own humanity. Behind him, the widow entered the room, her presence soft but commanding. She didn't speak right away, there was no need. They both knew that this moment had arrived and there was no turning back from the decision he was about to make. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. It felt almost like a plea. He turned, eyes meeting hers. Her gaze was steady, but he could see the flicker of something. Uncertainty, perhaps. She was hiding something, and he knew it. The man's words haunted him, twisting his insides into knots. Was she really the savior of Earth? Or had he been manipulated, used like a pawn in a much larger game? "I don't know anymore," he confessed, his voice raw. "You said you wanted me to help your children, but now, I'm not sure if I'm helping them or just giving them the power to destroy everything." Her expression softened, but there was a sadness in her eyes. She knew in some part of herself that he was right. She had never been completely forthcoming. The truth had always been more complicated, more dangerous than she let on. "You are afraid," she said quietly, "and you have every right to be. But you must understand, what is at stake is far greater than any fear you might feel. These children, they are not just your responsibility. They are the future. My people cannot survive without them, but neither can Earth. You hold their fate in your hands." His mind whirled. He wasn't just a father to these children. He wasn't just their protector. No, he was the key, the only one who could unlock their potential or hold them back from becoming the very weapon that could tear the world apart. Cold realization began to settle within him. He couldn't rely on anyone else to make this decision for him. The widow had her secrets, the man had his warnings, and the children were only as innocent as their abilities allowed them to be. But in the end, it was his choice, his responsibility. "What happens if I don't do this?" he asked, his voice trembling. She stepped closer, her eyes dark with the weight of the answer. "If you don't help them, they will be lost, and so will you. But the consequences are not just personal, you see. There are forces beyond this world that will come for them. Forces that are watching, waiting for a weakness. If they fall, we all fall. It is as simple as that." His heart pounded in his chest. The magnitude of her words hit him harder than anything else had. The world was on the brink of destruction, and he was standing at the precipice. Was he ready for this? Was he ready to gamble with everything? His eyes moved to the children. They were sitting silently in the corner, watching him with a mixture of innocence and understanding. The youngest one, with the silver hair, looked up at him, his tiny hand reaching out. "We need you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The words echoed in his mind, and for a brief moment, he saw not just alien children, but something else. Something human, something real. They weren't just pawns in a cosmic game, they were children, they were innocent just like any other children he had ever known. They had the same fears, the same hopes. He looked back at the widow, his resolve hardening. "I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can trust any of this, but I will protect them. I will raise them as my own." and I will make sure they understand the power they carry." She nodded, her face a mixture of relief and sadness. "Thank you. You don't know how much this means. The future of two worlds is in your hands." He felt the weight of her words. But there was one thing he knew for certain now. The future wasn't something to fear. It was something to create. His choices, his actions, would shape everything that came next. But there was one final question that still lingered in his mind. "Where do we go from here?" he asked, looking at the widow, his voice steady but uncertain. "What happens now?" Her eyes met his, and for the first time he saw something else, something beyond the weight of their mission. She wasn't just a mother or a survivor. She was a person who had faced the unimaginable and was now asking for his help. "We fight," she said simply. "We fight for them, we fight for Earth, and we fight for the future." And with those words, the final chapter began. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for everything that made them human, everything that made the Earth worth saving. The storm was coming, but together, they would face it.